The learning goal of this lesson is to further your understanding of how Tim Winton uses language and language features in the turning to create images, affect interpretation, and shape meaning. Winton's key idea in the turning is to encourage readers to empathise with people, seeking to understand rather than judge them. In this lesson, I'll be outlining how Winton uses language and language features to achieve this purpose. Suffering overwhelms many of the characters in the turning. In the small town of Angelus, there is a sense of imprisonment that damages and thwarts the individuals living there. Winton conveys this amassing of suffering through an accumulation of present participles in selected sentences. In Long Clear View, the second-person narrative invites you to peer out at the world of Angelus through your parents' window. Down there, people are quietly stealing, cheating, lying. They're starving their pets and flogging their kids. The accumulation of these present participles affects our interpretation of life in Angelus, making the suffering current and continual for the characters living there. There is something deeply authentic about Angelus and its inhabitants. Tim Winton told Andrew Denton that every character is a version of me, and as readers, I think we recognise ourselves in the damaged individuals in the stories. The characters certainly recognise themselves in other damaged individuals. In Defender, Vic Lang recognises his adolescent self, gun-happy and afraid, in Martin Bryant, who murdered tourists in a Tasmanian shooting massacre. However, it's not only the characters that we recognise in the turning, we also recognise their experience of the world. Winton uses imagery to evoke the senses: vision, sound, taste, touch and smell. Through this use of language, Winton invites readers to experience the vivid and familiar world of Angelus. This experience of the familiar is vital because it creates a sense of recognition in the readers, enabling them to empathise with the deeply flawed characters. There are connections between all the characters in the turning. These links are slowly revealed as stories provide context for characters' actions and identities. The structure of the turning is an elaborate arabesque pattern, resembling a stand-up comedian returning to earlier jokes. Events are repeated in the different stories, and each repetition provides new perspectives on the characters. Now, it would be quite easy for a collection of short stories to be a loose mess. However, Winton connects the separate stories through his use of motif. Arguably, the most important concept that recurs in the turning is that of time. Throughout the stories, there is a sense that an individual's identity is a consequence of their experiences. The past, present, and future are inextricably linked. In Aquifer, the narrator constantly reflects on the concept of time and has the habit of calling the 1194 number on the public telephone to discover the exact time.
At the third stroke, it will be 2, 43, and 20 seconds.
At the end of the story, he poignantly states, "The past is in us and not behind us." Here, he's asserting that we are all products of our experiences, and there is a sense that we are all very small parts of the world and the universe. Indeed, Winton once referred to humans as cosmic dandruff, and this image captures a sense of existentialism that pervades the turning. Winton's great gift as a storyteller is his ability to create evocative images in a reader's mind. In a lesson analysing Tim Winton's use of language and language features, it's impossible not to discuss his use of similes. Similes are Winton's favourite technique. He regularly uses them to add to and develop his descriptions. Some critics, and very good English teachers, have suggested that Winton overuses similes in his writing. However, I believe his similes are both fresh and natural. If you listen to Winton speak, he unconsciously uses similes in conversation, and in the turning, the similes come across as a natural part of his descriptions. I'd certainly argue that Winton applies George Orwell's first rule for effective writing: never use a metaphor, simile, or other figure of speech which you are used to seeing in print. An example of the freshness of Winton's similes in the turning is his description in Big World of "the V-dub shakes like a boiling billy." Now, I've never read this simile before, and I believe it captures the shaky experience of driving in an old VW. I suspect the most international readers won't understand the comparison of the old car to a billy, which is an item connected to Australia's frontier history. Therefore, the use of this colloquial simile particularly appeals to Australian readers who visualise and feel the familiar sensation of travelling in the old car. For Australian readers, the colloquial language in the turning is their own language. Winton makes extensive use of Australian vernacular and idioms in his writing, providing his characters with voices that are both familiar and recognisable to his predominantly Australian audience. In an interview with Jennifer Byrne, Winton explains his feelings concerning the Australian vernacular. "I think our accent is gorgeous, and I think our colloquial words are poetic." As such, Winton has the characters in the turning celebrating this colloquial poetry. They crack a sad, think of nicking themselves, are carrot tops, poms, went spare, have oldies, are stunners and troopers, clean grotty showers, have gutfuls, are mad buggers, and old boilers wearing tracky dacks, consider topping themselves, went spastic, are bloody sooks and duffers and come a cropper. Like his use of imagery, Winton's colloquial vernacular results in Australian readers having increased empathy for the characters. This empathy derives from the fact that the characters speak the same colloquial language as the readers, and there is, therefore, an understanding between them. And that's it. You've made it. To recap the main points of the lesson, I considered how Tim Winton uses language and language features in the turning to create images, affect interpretations, and shape meaning. The key idea that Winton is trying to convey to readers is that we should try to understand people rather than superficially judging them. Winton's use of language and language features creates a familiar world, which readers recognise. He uses an accumulation of present participles in sentences to represent the overwhelming sense of claustrophobia of the small town. Winton also provides readers with a genuine sense of place and people through his use of imagery, and he ties his disparate stories together and shapes meaning through his use of motif. The turning is filled with evocative similes, which I believe are fresh and interesting, and often distinctively Australian. Certainly the language generally is filled with colloquialisms and idioms that celebrate the Australian vernacular. So, as the orchestra music begins to play, the final thing for me to do is to thank you so much for watching.